So let's talk about this, right? This is the process of humanization. This is where the example that I said before would come into play, right? How do we make sense of this? Freire situates this emancipation in terms of a gestational example, right? A gestational example being an example of pregnancy. So when I draw this, when I attempt to visualize, right? Because I think the pictures actually help. When I attempt to visualize what he's saying, I'm going to draw it in terms of gestation, right? In terms of pregnancy. This is what he says. Well, this is not what he says, but these are my notes on what I read that he said. The oppressed is host, right? He definitely does use the term host. The oppressed, those people who are oppressed by an oppressor. The oppressed is host to their own oppression, right? And they're host to this oppression in the following manner. Imagine that we have the oppressed, right? So this will be the oppressed. Right? And here is, this is the gestation, right? That's the big belly. The point that he says is that the oppressed is host to their own oppression. So that though I'm oppressed, there's some oppression inside of me. And I'll use oppressor, O-P-P-R-E-S-S-O-R, right? Though I'm oppressed, there's an oppressor inside of me. The way that Freire situates this example is in terms of an act of liberating this oppressor from outside of me, externalizing this oppressor, right? Like evacuating this oppressor from inside. I'm oppressed, but I am host to an oppressor, right? We recognize that this oppressor, and I don't want to go too far with the metaphor, but this oppressor is a consequence of an actual oppressor, right? O-P-P-R-E-S-S-O-R, right? And what the oppressor does is that the oppressor imposes oppression on us, as sort of like phase one, the imposition of oppression. I internalize that oppression by becoming what? A sub-oppressor, right? I oppress others. And I need to relinquish this desire to oppress others. I need to remove that. I need to purge that sense of having to oppress others from me, which will destabilize the relationship between the oppressor and me, right? The oppressor imposes oppression on me. All that I understand is in terms of oppression, and hence I almost birth, I birth oppression, right? I birth another oppressor, and I oppress that relationship. In this process of humanization, we must struggle to divorce ourselves, right? We must struggle to divorce ourselves from the adhesion to the oppressor, and thereby liberate both the oppressed and the oppressor, right? I have to struggle, we have to struggle to liberate ourselves from the oppressor, right? So how can we make sense of this? Inside of me, right, and this is metaphorically speaking, right? Inside of me, though I am oppressed, is an ability to be an oppressor. I have the ability to be an oppressor. How? As we already said, groups that are oppressed can oppress members within an already oppressed group. That technical term is sub-oppressor, right? So that I can be a sub-oppressor. I'm a black male, but I was born in Jamaica, and I could have aversions to black Americans, right? I could say, oh, black Americans aren't like black Jamaicans, right? Don't call me black American, right? I'm not like black Americans, right? So that I can demonize black Americans. I don't do this in any sense, but you have my understanding. Both of us, both black Americans and black Jamaicans, are oppressed groups. We're members of basically the same group. But what I do is I say, well, oh, I'm black Jamaican. I'm not black American, right? They're different from me, right? We're better than black Americans. We're not like black Americans, right? So what I've done is I have inside of me, though I'm already oppressed, an ability to oppress others. What I need to do is I need to divorce myself of this idea of oppression. I need to get oppressor, the idea of being an oppressor, outside of me. I need to get it outside of me. I need to externalize it completely. I need to divorce myself from that idea. Insofar as I divorce myself from that idea and I embrace the black American, I recognize that my son is black American. And I recognize literally that my son is me. So I am Black Jamaican. My son is literally Black American. And how could I not have a fondness for Black Americans when my own kid is a Black American? Then I recognize, oh, this is ridiculous. They're trying to oppress all of us. And now you can see that the process has started, right? I need to purge that sense of oppression from myself in order to liberate myself. And insofar as I do that, I eventually liberate the oppressor. We're going to go through this in more detail later, but this is where Gestalt is taking it. To return to this idea then of recognizing the situation of oppression, the good thing, according to Freire, is that our situation of oppression is not a totalizing situation, right? It's not a situation which defines us as such, right? The situation of our oppression, to go back to the last image that I drew, right? Oppressor, oppressed group, right? It's not this. Well, technically it is this. I mean, the fullest is, I'll draw it out in a second. There's a recognition, I mean, so we understand totally how this, and I probably should draw this in its totality, right? And I will. Okay, so at the first level, it is this would be first, right? A recognition of my situation of oppression, right? That recognition of my situation of oppression mandates, right, increased oppression, right? So a mandate to dehumanize, a mandate to further oppress, right? So that this relationship necessitates that. What I end up doing is I end up beginning my struggle. And now that I'm really starting to struggle, there's even more force by the oppressor to keep me oppressed. But now the oppressor recognizes that he has to. The oppressor has to. The oppressor is himself or herself caught in a situation, a relationship of oppression, right? I attempt to deconstruct, right? I attempt to break down the system of my oppression, right? And insofar as I travel this way, you can imagine that it's a tether, and this tether is pulling the oppressor right behind me. So as I move to this state of affairs, the oppressor moves out of this state of affairs and so on, until I arrive at a state of freedom, right? Until I arrive at a state of freedom. What ends up happening is that with respect to my situation of oppression, it's not that I am oppressed and that in a situation of oppression, and that the oppressors are in a situation of oppression, but there's another bracket, right? There's our oppression. So there's my oppression, there's their oppression, and then there's our collective oppression. And I think that sort of shows it. And this obviously would be authenticity, freedom. Okay. In recognizing the situation of oppression, this recognition can be transformed into a situation of free autonomy, which is a necessary, though not sufficient condition. And as I said, right, it's not the case that only recognizing, if I just recognize that I'm incarcerated, that I'm oppressed in a situation of oppression, that I'm free. That's not it. I need both the recognition and then we'll see all the different systemic processes of destroying the system, right? It's not just the recognition. You can't just say, oh, I'm confined, and then you're free. You need to recognize that you're confined and then begin the process of destroying, destroying your own incarceration, right? And then the last point is, in recognizing the situation of oppression, recognition of oppression is the first state of liberation. The birth example, but not the only state, right? This recognition is the first state. What I need to do, again, is that once I recognize that my situation of oppression is one that has been mandated by an oppressor, I need to attempt to free myself. And in freeing myself, what I'm doing is I'm pulling the idea and I'm removing myself from this confine, right? This being the, and philosophers would say as such, right? S-U-C, right? Philosophers would say the situation of oppression as such, so that I'm internalized, right? This relationship is only understood in a dynamic discussion of subordination, of oppression. But what I end up doing is I recognize that I'm not going to participate in this act, and I attempt to free myself from this act of oppression, right? And once I free myself, like in the birthing example, once I remove myself from an act of oppression, I can slowly pull the oppressor out into a state of authentic freedom as well. And that's where we are for this section. So with that being said, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I will continue the discussion of Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed in subsequent videos. Also, as I go along, the document will grow, the PDF will grow, it'll get larger, and there will be more detail. So as we go along, the document will expand. And as I said, if you don't want to watch the videos, just download the document and use it to facilitate your reading. If you want to watch the videos and don't want to read the document, then just thank you for watching. But if you want a total account, I think using the document that I've created along with viewing the discussion, because I give more in the discussion than that's obviously in the document, will help you have a better understanding of Paulo Freire's timeless classic, right? Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell, and have a good day.